What's up, y'all? We got a short little episode today with Stirling Cox from Inspector Call Center. So we've been meaning to get them on because they're doing some cool things over there. They acquired and got into this industry a few years back and took over a call center, merged with another. And they're one of the few independent ones that I know of that are still out there. So I wanted to give them a little airtime. One, because I think he's a good dude trying to run a good business. Um, but he also educates a little on who call centers are for, who they're not for. So it's not exclusively a sales pitch for them, but just, I ask him a little of what trends he's seeing out there with the calls they're getting inbound. Home buyers' temperature, on price sensitivity, volume, things like that. And then we talk a little bit about why the compensation for call center reps matters a ton for your business if you're considering a call center. Again, they're not for everyone. Not sitting here saying everyone needs a call center or everyone doesn't. Just like giving perspectives and letting people speak their piece and talk about why they are a thing in our industry, because they certainly are. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Another heads up, we are doing a webinar. I'm doing a webinar a week from today. So that's May 18th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm going to put the link to register in here, but the topic is how to connect with agents using social media to grow and maintain relationships. So this is more for new inspectors, first year inspectors, or experienced inspectors that wanted to gobble up market share. So to me, social, each month I'm hearing success stories of people utilizing social to win. And I don't think there's a good playbook out there. I've done, 100 plus episodes of the podcast and heard lots of great stories of how people are using it. I'm trying to distill that down for you guys in a webinar and give you a little bit of, some steps to take to create these habits so you guys can keep finding these agents, because I keep encouraging everyone, because every time I see someone cancel or drop out of the industry, they say market conditions or they say slow market. Don't let that be the reason. I think this is a market that is going to benefit the aggressors, the ones that go out and get the business, the ones that go out and find the relationships, because they will not come to you in this environment. This is a year where the go-getters are growing and winning agents over, winning relationships, getting jobs. And the ones that are sitting back thinking it just happens to them are falling out of the business. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that to happen to anybody. So join the webinar. I'll put the link in the description, or right into our chat bubble, and they can send you the link as well. And we'll be sending out some emails over the next couple of days so you guys can get registered. All right, enjoy the conversation. Cool. All right. Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Spectora Spotlight. We have Stirling Cox here. We've known each other for years now, so thank you for doing this. We've had trouble connecting the dots with each other lately because we've both been pretty busy, but glad we finally got to catch up. We were chatting a little bit before, but welcome, man. Thanks for taking time to chat.
Nice.
I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to everyone, first of all, because we were just talking beforehand, and it's like, I don't think call centers are promoted enough. They're not talked about enough out there. And so we've been friendly for years. But yeah, just give us the rundown on kind of where you're at with the business, because a lot of people might not know you.
Yeah. Well, so we our company is called Inspector Call Center. Somewhat original name. We my business partner and I stumbled into the industry about 4 years ago, basically, and got going. We well, one kind of thing, the home inspection industry is a key part of the American system, and it's going to kind of be here forever, or provides a very valuable service, even though it's not technically a requirement, but certainly it's going to be here forever. And two, sort of for us, it's an interesting industry just because it's half transactional but half relationship based, basically. And so there's an interesting combination of sort of data and technology, where you need to make sure that you're able to sort of be hyper effective, and in our world it's pick up those phone calls as quickly as possible, but also analyze data and see our marketing strategy is working. Are you getting callbacks from your campaigns and things like that? And then at the same time, it is a human to human business, and so our job is to build relationships with the agents and the buyers. But so my business partner and I've been here for about coming on 4 years. We acquired an existing call center that was called Personalized Answering and Scheduling Services. The domain was wescheduler.com that Tom and Lois Roscoe had started back in 2005, and then we had 25 or so home inspectors when we bought them all on ISN. They hadn't sort of integrated with Spectora before. Last summer, we acquired Inspector Call Center and merged the two companies together basically, and we're under the Inspector Call Center brand right now. So I guess sort of have a lot of people who've been in the industry for a while, but technically we've been at this for the last 3 years or so. We have about 100 home inspection companies that we represent, multi-inspectors and single inspectors, but we're still sort of feel like an early stage company, a few years behind you guys, but trying to I guess sort of hate the word call center, but we try and represent the inspectors, and we know how hard the inspectors and everyone's working out there. We have a phenomenal team of about 30 people who are in different parts of the country to cover different time zones, but that are all hyper incentivized and motivated and really care about the inspectors and are very aware that every single booking that we make or the survival of our inspectors is what we do directly impacts their ability to have a business and provide a living for their families.
Beautiful. So just for context, everybody, when we connected, I thought it was refreshing. You guys came from outside the industry, which I want to ask you why this industry and kind of what you've learned from it. But yeah, so ICC and PASS, as some people, the OGs listening probably know PASS from many years ago, and merged together. And I think I remember when we first connected, it was kind of refreshing because you weren't jaded necessarily by everything that had happened in the past in the home inspection industry. You had a fresh perspective. And I think all industries, especially ours, can benefit from fresh perspectives that come from the outside. But yeah, how and why did you stumble kind of in this industry, if you don't mind sharing, just like what that looked like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my dad was a contractor, and so sort of I grew up a little bit in the sort of more just general construction field. My previous business was nothing to do with the home inspection industry, but we were a sales organization. I guess it was interesting just sort of looking. I like hate the call center word, but sort of we have to constantly be out there finding the best people. We have, I think sharing before, we have very low turnover, but we're growing. We're having to, always hire people and deal with people problems, and it's hard to sort of keep people engaged. I find that sort of interesting. And my business partner, his company was a software company for call centers, so we have a knowledge base, I guess, around the call center industry, or sort of how to, because you've got to schedule correctly. That's half the challenge. Is if you have too many people sitting around, you lose money, or it's super expensive for your clients. Or if you have too few people, then calls get dropped. So it's actually surprisingly complicated to actually get to run it effectively. But when we were looking, I guess sort of the home inspection industry had come back to what we were saying. It was sort of certainly how the setup was of both PASS and I guess ACC is the same way. We get paid on a success basis, which is every time we book an inspection, we get paid. That's how the inspectors get paid. And so, which is very different than a lot of industries. A lot of industries like, hey, you're an electrician, you're coming in for smaller jobs. In this case, it's like, hey, there is an inspection. It's a major milestone in the life cycle of the homeowner, but then they move on and they're done. Versus you've got a plumber, you're building a relationship for the long term or things like that. So it's so we didn't have necessarily a hugely, hey, we think we can change everything in the home inspection industry, but certainly the model where it's like, hey, there's a success basis for us was kind of the starting point. And most importantly, just because I mentioned it before, but our whole system is now we pay people on a success basis. So every single person on the phone gets paid every single week based on how many inspections they book. And so that's where the transactional thing for us comes in to be helpful, just because we know how many inspections we booked, we can pay people based on that, basically. And so surprisingly, there's not that many industries that are there. So there wasn't, I wish we sort of been like, we had some amazing outside love for the home inspection industry. That wasn't at all the case. It sort of we sort of stumbled into it more than anything else. I equally, I'd say I get made a lot of fun of by people being like, "What are you doing in this home inspection industry?" And now I'm sort of sufficiently stubborn. I was like, let's talk in 20 years' time. I think there'll always be there's always going to be a need, and certainly you've seen more than we've seen, but it's sort of it's a fascinating industry. I'm still baffled at the amount of what's the right word, sort of into politics and sides and who's in love with who and sort of gossip around certain things. That's only for us. We try and play somewhat neutral and be like, here's what we can do and can't do. But I never the question wasn't this, but sort of what has surprised me since being in the industry is quite how much sort of internal gossip and fighting there is, surprisingly, which I guess every industry has. Equally, I think sort of last few years have proven that it can get pretty ugly, and I think I think everyone would be better served if we kind of had everyone getting along and be like, how do you make the whole home inspection industry, succeed as a whole versus infighting necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. I laugh because anyone listening that's been in the industry and knows we've been in it for a while, it's like, yeah, it's like there's like you would think religious wars over features and softwares and right now the current thing is payment processing. We're making changes with that some people aren't happy with. And so, it's like everyone, yeah, of course, is entitled to their opinions. And it's like social media is my problem where I think the dialogue gets ugly and short. Everyone tries to condense nuanced opinions down into 140 characters or 300 characters or whatever, and then it leads to ugliness. And so I'm the same way. I'm like, I'll debate anything with anyone if you're going to come at it with thoughtfulness and be respectful and treat me like a professional. Cool. I'll hear your opinion all day. I'll get on the phone with you anytime. But yeah, there's even this episode, I'm sure will stir up some debates on call centers and some love, hate, this and that. But you said you glossed over two things I think are really important. You said you guys have like virtually no turnover over the last couple of years. That's really important right now because there are call centers out there that are experiencing high turnover and it's impacting our clients and our mutual clients. And so I want to highlight that. So like anyone that is with a call center thinking about it, like turnover matters because you get a fresh person on your team or pod every couple months. That's a problem because they don't know your business. They don't know your add-ons. They don't know the tone and voice of your company. So I like that you said that because turnover is big right now because there's been a few acquisitions that everyone's, I think, well aware of in our industry that have resulted in turnover. And then two, you said the way they're compensated. So you said basically they're fully compensated on if they book the inspection, right? And I think that's music to inspectors' ears. Like, how has that been a successful kind of model?
I mean, on your first one on turnover, I guess and I think it's for me, I think the multi-inspector firms would agree, or sort of, I think it's impossible to build any business with high turnover. Your cost of recruiting, your cost of training, your some impact is that historically call centers, just as a general bucket, it's not necessarily the home inspection industry, just had very high turnover, mainly because it's not a high paid job. It's not sort of seen as particularly exciting for a lot of people. It's like, let's just do it. But I guess we came into it with our eyes wide open on it. And have designed everything to try and create a really cool, positive, collaborative work environment that people love working here. And we hire people who are, in it for the long run. We have career paths basically, so we don't, even though we don't pay fortunes to people, we can't afford to provide a fair costing service, but we invest a lot on the sort of team building culture, career paths, and it's cool sort of seeing, even though everyone's fully virtual, how over Teams and then video they can actually build really good friendships and things like that. And I think that's like we're very fortunate that sort of that part is working. But I think it's certainly in the call center industry we're more exposed to it than typical companies because it's just the nature of the work can feel repetitive. Equally, it's a death sentence as far as than for any company, and so we work on it every day. On the compensation side, I guess, I mean, I don't know. We're a business, so we're trying to make money on it. Equally, we don't like having arguments, and we sort of want to be very transparent, and we want to know how we get paid as a company, and we want to make sure that, same for everyone on our team, like we don't want to be rowing against them, we don't want to be rowing against the company, and so we need to make sure that we're all incentivized, and a lot of call centers sort of typically just pay people by the hour, which is how most people are used to being paid, which is how it used to be in the companies that we bought. It was a lot of work to actually shift over. But I don't know. We had a new demo or new client signing up last week, and we had one of the reps on the phone. I had him join in the meeting, and the inspector was like, "I want to not talk to you. I want to talk to the person who's actually going to be talking on it. Like, how do you handle these situations? How do you go and talk to an agent about an upsell program, basically? So, because our people get paid on an upsell basis because there's high margin in it for the inspectors. But how do you deal with a situation where it's not the buyer, it's the agent calling in, he doesn't have authority to go and get the upsell, and we didn't technically have a script of exactly how it works. And he's like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the person who's actually doing it. And he's like, well, call up the person afterwards, introduce this. And it's really cool sort of seeing that, because he gets to make, we charge, I think it's $8 per upsell. He gets $5 of that. And so it's like, I'm going to spend the time doing this thing. And, we have to be careful that they're not overselling or kind of selling things that they're not supposed to on certain homes or things like that. So there are some downsides to the model. Equally, I don't want to be fighting on being like, hey, did you do everything you could to try and win that inspection, basically? I mean, that's how we get paid as a company. If we don't get those, we don't get paid. Equally, that's a livelihood, and our job is to make sure that we kind of highlight the differentiators of our clients. But no, we've got a really cool team of people, and the incentive model is one it is a differentiator. It's a pain in the butt to do, because most people don't want to work on a commission-only basis. Sure. They need to make sure that they have enough flow, they know what they're doing, and so we've gotten that now working. But it's cool. We have spot incentives, people who can close the most, they get higher rewards and things like that, basically.
Yeah, I think it aligns incentives, which again is hard sometimes, but works. Who in your opinion are call centers not a good fit for? Like, I think it's important to disqualify anyone listening that thinks it might be for them. Like, what have you seen not work well?
Yeah. I mean, I guess a few groups. I think when you're starting up, you got a sort of decision to make, and I think it's maybe there's maybe 20% of people who are starting up should consider a call center. A lot of people probably shouldn't. You've got to, technically we could help you, but if you don't know, there's certain aspects of getting to build the relationships with the agents and things like that. If you're in a franchise or in a different group, it might be a little different, where you get some support. But if you're starting by yourself, the cost and the sort of separation from some of your agents may not make sense. So for certainly early stage companies, it's there. Equally, sort of, we work with some extremely large inspection groups, and for them, what we do is we do overflow. So they will have their own internal call center. And if I was, running a RIA or one of the giant groups, they have their own internal call centers. That is the best model for them, because you have such specific requirements of how you need everything handling. And so the best we can do is kind of support from an overflow standpoint. So I'd say if you've got a 50-person plus inspection group, where you pretty do want to build your own in-house, if you're starting off or you're there, it can be expensive. I think if you're not planning on investing in trying to grow your inspection business, in the sense of not, because we've got half of our clients are single inspectors. So and we provide, I think, a phenomenal service for them. Equally, they are out there proactively doing things and building relationships, etc. They've established it enough that there's flow to justify it. People who are, hey, this is a part-time job, I'm a fireman here and I'm part-time home inspector, and it kind of works. We struggle because they just don't have the same availability, etc. So I'd say, we support, single and multi inspectors, but this has to be kind of your main you've got to have enough kind of you've got to be fully on this and believing this is what you're going to do, not a side project, and then B, that you got enough of the pieces already moving that we can be a real leverage to you, if that makes sense. And we track a lot of things with the agents and building agent relationships, but if it's your first ever inspection, it's hard to justify. So we have some who straight off the gate have used us. I've found the ones who work, it's like sometimes they sold an inspection company before they relocated across the country. I'm starting again. I know exactly what I want and I'm doing, but other than that, I think if you're starting off, I don't know. I think you're better off probably saving the money and kind of going and getting some things going to start with, just because it's hard when you're starting up. So.
Yeah, I agree. You have more time than money when you're starting off usually, and time is probably best spent building relationships. But the inspector that's doing 30, 50 a month.
Oh, those are no brainers. As in, like, then they've got to decide. So then it's a question of I guess there's some people who, or other categories are certainly if you need everything done a very specific way. So part of, and I think we're unique on that, is you've got to have some standards, basically, if you're going to provide it to multiple companies, where you've got to have we found a call flow that works where we convert the maximum number of appointments basically from it. So we have to have everyone follow that same call flow. So we can't say some completely different spiel. We allow every single client to customize, what we're saying throughout that, but we have one flow. And so, and there are some inspectors. It's like, hey, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example. But there's some situations where it's like, hey, I'd rather have my spouse or I'm going to hire a full-time person in house because I can use them to do 12 other things basically for you. Our job is to answer the phones and make sure, we book everything that comes through. So I guess if your business model, you're planning on sort of making the call piece, 20% of someone's job, and you can see a really good use of like 80% of all the other things they're doing, then we've seen some companies do that. Equally, you'd be surprised the number of times where it's like that person goes off on vacation or they're in the restroom or whatever it is, or Monday mornings, we get multiple calls coming in at once, and that's when the money's made basically. But I'd say certainly when you're starting off, it's a high bar to sort of justify, but if you've got as long as you're doing at least 20 inspections a month, then you should at least consider it.
Cool, good to know. Yeah, it's good to have just like a solid or a number, a guidepost at least. What is the current environment and market? How is that impacting you guys? Are conversion rates down? What trends are you hearing from your people in terms of how agents and clients are viewing home inspections or volume wise? What are you seeing out there?
It's ugly. Although I feel like it's been kind of shitty the last few years, to be honest. So we've grown as a company equally. So phone call wise, on a like-for-like basis, Q1 2023 was down about 25% versus Q1 2022, which was a big drop off already. And 22 was not considered to be a good year, and versus 19, we're probably still 50% down.
Sure.
As a sort of industry. So it's we're in the same flow. We get paid on an inspection basis. Our overall per inspector count is down, unfortunately, and so everyone sees. There's no secret as to why. It's kind of a mess out there. Equally, I hopeful. So we're starting to see, starting last few weeks, some interesting signs of like things do seem busier. Like Q2 last year was flat on Q1 last year, which we were surprised about. Typically Q2 is a big pickup. Right. 2020 with COVID, April was nothing. May picked up. June and July were gangbusters, and then 21 was crazy, and then 22 there's a shortage of homes still on that, which still happens. It's interesting. There's a I don't know, maybe it's just because people are incentivized on the booking, and I think a lot of people are worried, like, is there much price sensitivity in the market? We've not seen any price sensitivity. It's like they're either looking for an inspection or they're not, we I guess sort of constantly track why people might cancel or might not book, but certainly right now there's no issues of availability or servicing or things like that. But I don't know. So in the last couple of weeks, we've been positively surprised with like an uptick in volume. Don't want to get sort of overly excited that sort of, hey, we're back to sort of a nice sort of spring because the rates are still high. But certainly it's better than, or let me put it this way, it was scary or frustrating 2 years ago when people were calling in, canceling them because they were being outbid the whole time, or everyone's waiving inspections. I don't think that's good for the industry. We do think, or let me put it this way, I'm proud of, you know, feel like we are adding a bunch of value where, you know, these home buyers, they are out there and they feel, you know, it is a nervous process, and certainly, you know, what we tell our inspectors in their marketing material is like, you're at the end of the day, you're not buying a $500,000 house, you're getting a $400,000 mortgage. The bank owns your house, you owe $400,000 to the house, and if you do pay that off, then you own the house, but you don't actually own the house. And then so make sure you know what you're buying. And so certainly we've seen, compared to last year, a lot more, you know, they know they need it, if that makes sense. Whereas last year we were getting shoppers being like, hey, do I need an inspection, was a question we were getting last year.
Interesting.
And it's not a requirement, obviously, in any states, although some states obviously license, but there's no requirement to get a home inspection. So we're getting a lot more of those questions. Now there's none of those. But no, I think our view is that sort of every single interaction you have, and it can be someone who's calling in, you know, from a year ago with some question on their report, is the top inspectors we represent, you know, look at that as an opportunity to keep building relationships, to keep wowing them, and, you know, they'll come back eventually. It'll be that one sort of over and above thing you did that in 2024, 2025, suddenly, you know, hey, that agent came back up or whatever it was. So, but yeah, no, I'd say data we see or kind of customer feedback is, or everyone keeps thinking price is an issue. We don't see that at all. We never really have. You've got to differentiate yourself in terms of explaining the service that you're doing. But generally what we found is like the professionalism and access are the two biggest things that they care about. It's like they want to make sure they can speak to the inspector, they can get their questions answered on their reports, and so that hasn't changed. Certainly volumes have been a lot lower than what we were expecting, and hoping to see them pick up. And certainly there's no, people know they need the inspection. And my hope is certainly that 2021, 2022, there's going to be a bunch of people who got burned, who bought houses without getting home inspections done, and there's going to be some realtors with egg on their face, and it's like, hey, it's not my money anyway, so let's make sure we always recommend it. And we have seen some interest, or some, and again, it's very dependent on parts of the country. Some parts of the country are doing well and less well, and we've seen some interesting. I don't know. Interested in your take on it. I feel like there's a missed opportunity for inspectors to capitalize more than just on like, hey, pay me $400 and give you this sort of report on your house. I know there's lots of inspectors who are trying, you know, staying in touch with them afterwards, helping with, you know, follow-ups once they bought the homes. Are there other things sort of going on, but or you know, doing inspections at the 11th month on a new property construction. But I feel like there's a lot more value that sort of, or there's so much work done and almost not that much value conveyed other than like checking the box you've got a home inspection, unfortunately. But I don't know if you have any other ideas on that.
I have lots of ideas on this. I've had many conversations about this. You know, and some inspectors,
other than selling the data to people we don't want
other than
deal with, and letting them do it. But I don't know. I think it's, you're going through and doing all that for the. And I remember when we bought our house, I got a report and we got a discount basically as the roof was all, but equally I don't know half the stuff on my house, and I'm considering paying for a home inspection to get done, just sort of educate the homeowner properly on it. I know a lot of inspectors aspire to do that, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's gonna come back.
What you just described, though, is the single biggest opportunity our industry has, and our industry has to decide if we want to like hold ourselves back. And this is not me from a biased standpoint saying Spectora will gain. Yes, we'll do well if the industry embraces this mentality of providing more value and recommendations and kind of being the home consultant. But if our industry ultimately can't wrap their heads around adding more value and making more money, it's not going to happen. And our industry will just let the billions of dollars of commerce that happens stay outside of the home inspection industry. So to me, I think the people that naysay it, I think it's an internal problem they have of their own value. I think they want to maybe hold themselves down, and that's gonna cut deep for some people. But to me, it's a no brainer when you think of you move into a new house, you want all kinds of recommendations. You just want someone that you trust. Guess what? You just trusted the home inspector or their team, and so it's we'll
No, it's
see.
interesting. I mean, so we've got some of our inspectors who are like, we always have to say, okay. So someone calls up, they've got an issue with something that happened. We've got a de-escalation process, but we've got some inspectors who are like, I want to go to that house and I'm going to do it. And like, even if it's a problem that they had nothing to do with, it was like nothing to do with the home inspection. It's like, I want to go to that house. I want to talk to the person. I want to help them because they know that, hey, eventually they'll get back to the agent. Even in 1 in 10 will do, but that one conversation when it happens. And so, I don't know, not is it our job to force everyone to go and take care of the person you inspected a year ago? Equally, I do think that certainly those ones are very successful inspection businesses, but they really care about it, and they look at it as like, I'm going to be friends with this person. You bought your house, you got questions on your house, I'm here for you, if that makes sense. I'm not just providing a home inspection and a report. It's like, you call me anytime, I'll come by and take a look at your house and let you know what it is, and it might be a problem you had, or even, hey, I didn't inspect your house, let me take a look at it, which I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's an openness to opportunity that I think some in our industry get, some don't. We got 2 minutes left. I want to ask you, from your vantage point, what do you think inspectors can improve on in the realm of, you mentioned professionalism and access being two key things. What are some things you've seen over the years where you're like, hey, I think this is where inspectors can improve, whether it's being prepared when they get to you or setting up, we talked beforehand of like, are you asking for a review? Are you thanking the agent every time after an inspection via your emails? Things like that.
I mean, I don't know if I have suggestions on what they can necessarily improve. I mean, I'm not an inspector. Certainly, the ones, or let me put it this way, from our or feedback from my team on the sort of the inspectors who work well, which I also think is representative of the ones who succeed out there. There's just do what you say you're going to do. Kind of, there's a right double people who just forget to do something, and it's just it's sort of, if you're chasing and following up on stuff, like, we all make mistakes or things, but it's reliability sort of is key. And so I'm just looking from our team standpoint, where it's like, hey, we have a problem, we've got a customer on the phone that's upset about something, we're trying to resolve it. If the responsiveness is not quick, there's only so far that we can do to de-escalate a difficult situation or save a sale or whatever it is. So just looking, I guess, sort of again, just internally on the clients we've served, the ones that sort of seem to have the most successful inspection businesses and something that integrate really well with our team are really responsive. I guess sort of it's just it's just setting up the right expectations, I guess, and processes, where it's like, hey, if you say your report's going to come out in 24 hours, make sure it's out in 24 hours. If you think it takes you longer, say 48 hours, right? Because if you say it's coming out in 24 hours and you don't send it in 24 hours, at 24 hours and 5 minutes, we're getting a phone call. And that undermines all the other hard work that you're sort of doing. So that would probably be my one guidance, is just say what you're going to do and set expectations that you can always hit.
I love it. I love it. All right, we got to run. Where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you and your team and what you guys do?
Spectora Partners, you can always go on there, or inspectorcallcenter.com. You can find us there.
Perfect. I'll link to it in the description on YouTube for everyone watching on YouTube. Put it in the pod description as well. But thanks, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Awesome.
It's been too long.
Catching up. We'll see you down in Texas.
Yep. Pretty soon. We'll see you there.
All right.
All right. Take care. See you.
Bye.